This crypto bro just bet $2 million that Bitcoin hits $1 million in the next 90 days, predicting a complete banking collapse. And he's not a nobody. Balaji Srinivasan is the former chief technology officer at Coinbase and one of the most followed voices in crypto. But we spoke to the guy on the other side of that bet, whose joke tweet might end up becoming one of the most profitable shitposts in history.
The global economy is definitely going to have a bumpy ride in the near future, but I think he is nearly universally wrong.
So why is a Bitcoin bro betting millions of dollars on the collapse of the banking system? And did he already win the bet by capturing everyone's attention?
Balaji is very smart.
Big time thinker in crypto and beyond.
Are you as bullish as Balaji Srinivasan?
Banks around the world are collapsing, and yet Bitcoin is surging. It's now up more than 60% on the year, and even as more banks might need rescuing, Bitcoin's price continues its climb. That's apparently enough proof for Bitcoin supporters to take some big victory laps and claim that as governments step in, an inevitable financial Armageddon awaits.
They don't want you to panic. Don't panic. Don't worry. All the banks are good, full faith and credit, blah, blah, blah.
Now, to be fair, as the US faces its first banking crisis in over a decade, there is a lot of fear over what happens next. As we covered last week, startups with money in Silicon Valley Bank could have lost much of their treasuries if the government hadn't stepped in to guarantee their deposits. In fact, after surviving that, some crypto founders like Akash Network's Greg Osuri tell us they're moving money from banks into Bitcoin.
I'd rather take the volatility risk than insolvency risk any day to protect my wealth.
So sure, Bitcoin's price might go up or down, but that's better than your bank losing all of your deposits. But crypto startups taking that bet and the people holding the rest of the $18 trillion parked in US banks is an entirely different story. That much was obvious to James Medlock, a pseudonymous Twitter user who generally discusses progressive economic policies with his nearly 80,000 followers. He recently joked that he'd bet anyone $1 million that the US does not enter hyperinflation. Because if the US does enter hyperinflation, $1 million might only buy you a month of Netflix, and ad-supported Netflix at that. Do you get the joke? Well, Balaji didn't, telling James, "I will take that bet," and all of Twitter watched in astonishment. So is Balaji's bet really as insane as it sounds? If you ask Google's ChatGPT competitor Bard, it only gives Balaji about a 10% chance of winning. If you ask the users on decentralized betting platform Polymarket, he's got just a 1% chance. And James agrees. But in explaining his rationale for the bet, Balaji said the problem is that there isn't enough in the banks on a mark-to-market basis to cover withdrawals. Of course, banks never have enough cash on hand to satisfy their customers if they all demand their money back at once. But customers only do that if they completely lose confidence in their banks. So after SVB's collapse, the government stepped in to assure depositors that the government's always here to backstop your deposits.
Americans can have confidence that the banking system is safe. Your deposits will be there when you need them.
Now, like I said, banks in the US are on the hook for about $18 trillion in total deposits. Money that certainly exists on paper in a mix of securities and bonds, but certainly not in the form of cash in a vault. So if everyone shows up at once, it's going to be extremely awkward, especially when people realize the entirety of the FDIC's Deposit Insurance Fund only has $128 billion in assets. And as Balaji's argument goes, if panic gets worse, maybe the government will have to print trillions of dollars in order to correct that mismatch. And maybe, if that happens, the dollar will experience hyperinflation, and thus, people will start buying Bitcoin. Enough Bitcoin to make the price 40x to $1 million. Maybe. But only if they panic at the same time.
Basically, the Fed is serial killer. This is a digital Pearl Harbor on all dollar holders. The dollar holder is a bag holder. In many ways, America is already Argentina, gigantic pileup of bodies at the base of that cliff.
So a cynical take here would be Balaji's bet is dependent on instilling that panic. He only wins his bet if the Fed has to print more money. And the Fed only has to print more money if everybody panics. And what's catchier than capturing everyone's attention than saying Bitcoin's price is going to 40x because financial Armageddon is less than 90 days away? Of course, Balaji says that's not his intention at all, and instead he just wants people to wake up to the fact that money printing and the government backstopping banks helps them while hurting the average American's savings through dollar debasement.
I'm doing this because I actually love American values. You know, Paul Revere, the printing is coming. At least I feel that I did my duty to warn innocent Americans.
But what if it's a mix of both? As an early Bitcoin adopter and Coinbase backer, Balaji has every incentive to convince and capitalize on the panic-worried depositors who might begin to believe now is the time to choose Bitcoin. But maybe Balaji is not doing this for Bitcoin. Maybe he's just doing it for himself. And that would be pretty shitty, because it's true that money printing will devalue the dollar. As Americans battle post-pandemic inflation, I don't need to tell you why. And as a believer in Bitcoin myself, I'm actually pretty worried that its mainstream appeal will be hurt when Balaji's bet doesn't pan out. So why would Balaji risk losing Bitcoin's war for credibility over a $2 million bet? Well, because we're talking about him, and pretty much damn near everyone else is talking about him too. In fact, Balaji has already generated more than $1.2 million in earned media impressions in less than a week since he made his bet, and gained almost 100,000 followers. In that sense, even if he loses, Balaji's already won. But what about James Medlock, who will be raking in much more than just impressions when the dust settles? We spoke to him about his experience getting caught up accidentally in the bet that millions of people are now watching.
The global economy is definitely going to have a bumpy ride in the near future, but I think he is nearly universally wrong.
The man behind the Twitter account likes to keep his online presence separate from his real-life work. He sent back written responses to our questions, so the voice you're hearing is just AI. But he plans on donating 70% of his winnings to charity and happily paying his fair share of taxes. As an added bonus, James has been enjoying his time in the spotlight.
It's been a lot of fun. Even if for some reason it falls through or I don't get the money in the end, it's been worth it for the memes.
But what about that 1% chance Balaji wins, and the global financial system and the dollar do collapse? What will James Medlock do then?
Whatever I need to do to get by in the post-apocalyptic hellscape that the world has apparently become.
As for me, if anyone wants to make a $1 million bet, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, we'll keep reporting. I'm Zach Guzman. This was Coinage. Remember to like and subscribe, and as always, stay safe out there.